Hello, welcome back to Life on the Fringe. Today we have another guest.
Hi, I'm Elena, Francesca's youngest sister.
And we're going to be talking about what it's like to date bisexual people / marry. What was your experience with bisexual people before you started dating anyone who was bisexual? Like, did you have any preconceived notions about bisexuality?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I was kind of like, for me, my gay experience in general, I just when I figured out I was gay, I kind of jumped into a relationship right away with Maddie, the girl I'm currently dating who's bisexual. So I didn't really, when I got into the community, I didn't know a lot about it, so I didn't have a lot of stereotypes or anything running through my head when that first happened.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Stan?
I think I fell into the camp of believing that bisexuality was a phase. I think a lot of people think of it as a sexy phase or something like that of your life.
A sexy phase you never grow out of.
Yeah. I actually just saw that in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. They make a joke about that. So yeah, great movie. So yeah, I definitely fell into that camp where it was more all bisexuality is by curiosity. And then you would end up in one camp or the other.
Yeah, I guess if I did have any preconceived notions, it would be that. It's just kind of an in-betweener phase instead of what you actually are going to do. Because I thought about it too when I was first figuring myself out. I was like, maybe I'm bisexual. But I think for me, I just didn't know. But that's not the case in all cases. But yeah.
Did you have any interactions that went negatively where the differences between your sexuality and the person you're dating sexuality came up for either of you?
For me, not. Bro, can you say that again? You gotta think about it.
If the differences between your sexuality and your partner's sexuality ever came up, were there discussions about it? Was there something that had happened that maybe could have gone better, or discussions that were particularly enlightening?
Well, I think when me and Maddie first got together, we had a conversation about our sexuality for sure, and definitely because we were in high school too when we first started dating. So I would at school, I would tell my friends, "Oh, I'm a lesbian," or "We're the best lesbian couple ever." And for her, being called a lesbian was she didn't like that at all. So having that conversation around sexuality was really important and enlightening. Just knowing what her preferred label is and what jokes are okay and not okay. And
there was a stage where I felt like it needed to be proven somehow. In order to be bi, you should have been with two people, and at that point, Francesca had not been in our relationship, and that the idea that you needed to test something out in order to know it about yourself, it didn't really hit me that I hadn't had that experience. You just kind of know who you're attracted to, right? And so why am I attracted to women? It's a weird question, right? And some people have to question the societal pressures to figure that out about themselves. But you don't need to experience it in order to know. You just know.
For sure. I think that even for me too, it's when I was first coming out, where they're like, well, have you ever been with a man? Have you ever slept with a man? Have you dated a man? How do you know you only like girls? Blah, 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 blah. Even conversations coming out to family and stuff. Well, how do you know for sure? How do you know? So you just kind of know.
Yeah. You can turn that question right back at them. How did you know?
Right, exactly. So.
Yeah, and then I can speak to this question as well, because obviously, you're straight, I'm not. So, in my relationships, I've only dated one other bisexual person, and I've dated 2 straight people. So, when I was dating someone who was bisexual, it was interesting because we kind of came out around the same time to each other, and we weren't out publicly at all, but we came out to each other. And it was interesting because we kind of didn't have to have sort of this conversation, and we had it because we were trying to figure ourselves out, but there was a lot of stuff where we kind of like knew more about it just because we both identified as bi. But when I stopped dating that person, I started dating a straight person. There was always this like conversation of like having to come out, where it was like you have to just listen to whatever thing they have to say about it, and then, like you were saying, figure out like, okay, yeah, I get that's what your assumption is, but that's not actually how it works.
Right.
Because I dated someone who was straight, who had this like notion that all bi people are crazy. It's not Stan, it's a different person.
You are a little crazy, but not because you're bi.
Yeah. But it was like this idea of like everyone who's like bi has to be like so nonconformist all the time. And the person I was seeing was more traditional. But I'd say I'm a pretty traditional person. Like, I like traditions. But then, like you were saying, like the phase thing, or it's like a kink, and trying to like get past that. And if you want to hear more about this, you should watch the interview with Andrea, and she talks about her experiences dating like straight guys, and it's a lot of the kink thing. I think it's like the biggest thing, where it's like, yeah, yes, I also like other genders. No, I don't necessarily then want to have a threesome.
Right.
Right. The amount of threesomes has been very disappointing.
But yeah, so
I have a question.
yeah.
So for me, when I first started dating Maddie, so she's bisexual and I'm gay. For me, it was kind of interesting when we first started dating. I had a lot of insecurities about that. Like, me dating a bisexual woman, because I had it in my head where it's like, well, I'm a woman, I do not have a penis. There's going to be some things I just can't do for her because she has preferences, obviously she likes both. So for me, it was like an insecurity where it's like, well, I'll never be enough because I can't satisfy both of those pockets.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. I mean, I grew out of that, and of course, like, as we grew on, I became more confident with myself in our relationship and stuff, so it worked out. But
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was interesting in the beginning, for sure. I remember that being kind of a big thought in my head all the time, for sure.
I think that the reminder of that insufficiency is actually empowering to me, because there are elements, every couple, I think, can't fill every pocket of desire, right? I think if you just embrace that and be like, I'm not going to be everything, it gives you more confidence to be yourself, right? You're not trying to make up for those things that you lack because you know they're there.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like that. I don't know if that is true for everyone, but
No,
that's
I
my
think
case.
That makes sense, for sure. I think, like I said, like, I think that's kind of where I'm at now, where it's like, you can't be everything everybody wants all the time. So, yeah.
I think it's interesting that like you would have that insecurity, because I know you kind of had that insecurity too.
Yeah.
And every time I've come out like to a partner, like, especially after like my mom first found out that I was bi, she was like, you're gonna make this person like insecure if you tell them, because now they're competing against the whole world.
And I won. So
Suck it.
suck it, yeah. I
Suck
beat
it,
twice as
world.
many people.
I beat 7 billion people.
Yeah,
Screw
yeah.
you.
Yeah, you and your 3.5. Nice. Nice try.
Well, but also it's like this idea, I think, that like comes along bisexuality, that you're gonna like every single person, and that somehow everyone in the world is gonna like you. It's like, are we forgetting that like you don't like everybody? You know, like if you're straight, it's not like you find all women attractive. You know, if you're
It's
bi,
true,
you don't
yeah.
find all people attractive. It's just that like their gender is less of a factor.
Right.
And not everybody likes you, and I don't know. I always found that to be like strange, because even when I was dating someone who was bi, I guess like we just kind of both accepted that, like, yeah, you'll have interest and other crushes on people who are nothing like me at all. Like, but I could never, I wouldn't say it was empowering, but it was just like, I knew who their crushes were, and I was like, I can't even make a comparison. Like, what am I supposed to compare? My eyes? Like, there's nothing, like, about my physical characteristics that are going to be comparable to
the other person.
Yeah, the other person. And
that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
Right. Like, when I think about my crushes on, like, all genders, I don't have, like, a through line. Like, they all have this in common. No, they don't.
Right.
So what would you guys say is, like, the hardest part about dating someone who's bisexual? Or dating someone, who, like I said, who's got a different sexuality than you? Would you, Stan, let's start with you.
Yeah.
You've dated straight people in the past.
Right.
What would you say is something different between dating someone who flies under the rainbow flag versus a straight person?
I think it was very eye-opening how ignorant people can be to these situations. And so when you're in a straight relationship, everything's assumed. But now you kind of have to explain things more, and you hear more of people making the wrong judgment and assessment. You hear like that like, oh, you want a threesome thing from people. And you're like, no, that's not it at all. It's who I fell in love with and decided to marry. So yeah, I think it's very challenging for some people, and having to fight that fight more often is the biggest change I've noticed. It's not challenging really, but it's very different.
For me, I think, just to go off what you said, for sure, I think adjusting to, like, being ready to put up your fists and fight, you know, if you're dating a bisexual or anyone in LGBTQ plus relationship, I think that's definitely something that just comes with the label pretty much at this point. Like, especially for us, like, we're in the Midwest right now, so it's like anybody can say anything at any time, and you know, and growing up in conservative-ish high school, you know, and like being in a relationship at that time was surely difficult and posed definite challenges for sure. But once you learn how to, like, either one, turn off what people are saying, or two, figuring out the right things to say back without, like, making it a huge confrontation, but saying what you need to say to kind of assert yourself into your space. I think that was super beneficial and helped in the relationship process too. But I think for me, when I got into this relationship, it was kind of freeing, because when you're in a relationship that's an LGBT relationship, it is really freeing, because you can do whatever you want with that relationship, because that community is so widespread and there's so many different labels and things to try and whatever. So I think that was a really fun part of the relationship at the beginning, for sure, was just like setting our own boundaries and our own relationships and stuff, because like you said, there's not really a pocket you fall into with that straight relationship where it's like, well, this is how it's gonna go, it's monogamous, there's these boundaries, there's this, and this, and that's how we're gonna do it, and we're gonna get married until that point. With gay relationships, it's kind of, you don't have to follow that. I mean, in straight relationships, you don't have to as well, but it's more typical that one does. So I thought that was a cool part of the relationship too. So
yeah, and I feel like you were saying, what's nice about being out in a relationship, because, like, you know, in a technical sense, like, if you're like, so for me, if I were dating like a guy, we can present as straight, and I wouldn't have to out myself if I wanted, like, a monogamous relationship with just that person. And I think one of the reasons why I don't, besides like I want them to know all of me, and I do think this is a large part, and it definitely has shaped my interpretation of situations I've been in, but I think another reason, like you said, is I've already had to change my perception of what like is good and bad to be something that's different than the societal expectations. And you can just get to deeper conversations. It's an avenue to get to deeper conversations when you talk about your sexuality. Even if you are dating someone who is like, where you're like a straight couple, because like Stan was saying, it's not the same experience as like being in a straight, like a straight relationship where both parties are straight, because you're both attuned to like
straightness.
Yeah, you both know what straightness is like, and you can look at it from the outside and decide like how much of that you actually want to adopt into your own relationship. And for some people, like, then you have very like traditional relationships. They just happen to take place with different genders, or like you end up in relationships that are very different from like the straight and typical monogamous heterosexual path. Okay, so one thing that I wanted to kind of conclude on is a difference between both of our relationships. So both Stan and Elena are dating bisexual people. However, our relationship, mine and Stan's, is very straight passing. Your relationship is not.
Definitely not.
And something that comes up a lot with bisexual people from the LGBTQ community is, and from straight people too, is that there's this like choice aspect. But before I wrap up with my thoughts on that, what do you think would be like the idea of you guys being a gay passing couple, like a lesbian passing couple, versus like us as a straight passing couple?
It's funny because I think there's pros and cons to both depending on the community you're surrounded in. If I was with, like, for example, at the wedding, we were around a bunch of family members. Some of them, might have a little bit different political views than us. So I'm sure for them, it was pretty shocking to see me, like, dancing with Maddie at the wedding, and, hugs and kisses or whatever during the wedding. So in that situation, or in just not any public situation, but in the public eye in general, it's more, you're just kind of always not on edge, because I'm not thinking about like being verbally attacked all the time like when I go out, but it just is something that I think I experience probably more than you guys do in public. But to flip it, if I'm surrounded by a bunch of my other gay friends, I would probably have an easier time in that setting because I have a girlfriend and Maddie doesn't have a boyfriend, you know what I mean? Where you two, or you're like straight presenting in an LGBTQ space, as crappy as it is, you might have a harder time in that space than I would. So there's pros and cons to both, just depending on who you're surrounded by.
But then, like you were saying, like, yeah, in the regular public, Stan and I don't have to worry about like being outed. But then, when I've gone to like LGBT events and Q+ events in college, we had like a prom, and I would never feel comfortable bringing Stan. Like, I had to go like stag, or like anybody that I was seeing at the time that was a guy, I would just go stag, because even though like we should be able to get to the prom,
a part of it just feels a
yeah.
way.
Yeah,
It feels a certain way.
Yeah, and other people
Which
have
it shouldn't. It should not feel that way. Like, you should be able to take stand to that prom, like, without a problem. I completely agree. It shouldn't be an issue, but it does feel a way for sure.
and people have thoughts about it as well.
Yeah.
And then other just like more casual parties that I've been to, like in LGBTQ plus like frat houses, there's this like assumption that everybody there is like gay or lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was like talking to different girls and like flirting or whatever, so much of the conversation would be about how men suck. And then me and my bi friends would be like, oh yeah, the horrible people. Don't know any of them. Never dated one.
Gold star right here.
Yeah. And it was just like super awkward because it was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't have any connection. And I think that's like...
That's funny because then it's so interesting, bisexuality, because it's like you're hiding parts of yourself. Well, you don't have to, but you're hiding parts of yourself from the straight community, and you're hiding parts of yourself from the gay community. It's just such a...
Yeah.
You don't
Like,
fit in
yeah.
nicely into either camp.
Yeah.
And I think like even people who like when they come out to like their parents is bi and or their partners, like this idea that eventually there'll be like a final choice. I just feel like it's interesting because it's like no matter what you choose or like if you end up like marrying a partner,
You're still gonna have crushes on.
yeah, you're 100% bisexual. Like
yeah.
like so that's where you are, and unless you're in a space that is 100% also populace bisexual, you don't fit in anywhere. And I just think that's like an interesting part about being bi.
And I think that's too where the partner aspect comes in a relationship too. If like your partner's not fitting into those spaces, well, you can always rely on your partner to fit into that space with them, kind of a thing. So yeah.
I think there is, so I would hate to speak on behalf of the experiences that you and Maddie have faced as an outwardly gay couple, right? People look at you dancing on the floor, they know, right? They face their cognitive dissonance, their problems internally when they see that. When we mention that Francesca is bi, we have to grapple with that through conversation, right? Because they were already, oh, they're straight, you know. Now now the cognitive dissonance is, oh, hold on, there's something else going on here, but you've made your choice, so you're still straight.
And you can argue, like it's like this, like if you see something and you have that cognitive dissonance because you're like looking at it, it'd be weird in most cases, and I think including like with like homophobic cases, to go up to that thing and just start arguing with it about what you see existing.
You guys are just questioning it, right? This isn't real.
Yeah. Right. Versus, if like I bring it up in a conversation, it's like, because all conversation topics are debatable. Therefore, I'm going to debate you on whatever it is you were saying about bisexuality.
Right. Like, and now here's proof. You married a man. You must have chosen.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of our content, click subscribe. Ding the bell button to know when we post, which is going to be every day again soon. And I hope you're having a happy Pride. We'll be posting more videos. Elena will be in another one. So look forward to that. But most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!